distribute $100,000 of funding for artists and arts organizations. This encompasses both for-profit and nonprofit, and we're very, very happy to support this partnership and think it's important that an art-led group has a role in determining how to evaluate and distribute those funds. We also set aside $150,000 to support arts programming. The programming will range from 10 to 15,000 per organization, and the goal is to help revitalize commercial areas. There's opportunities that can happen with, I would suggest that people are interested in working with parks. They work closely with the city about how we do that, and also youth programming. So unfortunately, the goal is for us to distribute funds as widely across the city as possible. So we've put restrictions on how many grants any one entity can receive. So organizations have to make choices about whether or not they're going to pursue a program grant or a relief grant. A relief grant is really focused on helping make you whole. Now, I also understand that for many of you, if you get a grant from the COVID Relief Fund, it may not make you completely whole, but the spirit of the relief fund is to address the losses that individual artists or arts organizations have faced in the wake of COVID. The program fund is actually about funding entities to provide arts programming. So there are two different approaches to addressing this. And you see this mirrored also in the broader nonprofit grants that we're also making available. The one thing we did revisit was working with youth organizations on summer arts. So the program grant looks at priorities for revitalization. We talked about commercial areas. It's not restricted to that, but that's an example. And we also talked about arts education for young people. Arts organizations can partner with youth serving organizations to do the youth summer program, which is also available right now. So I'd say for arts organizations, there are three opportunities. One, you can apply to the relief fund, which is being administered by the EDC, but the selection is being guided by the Jersey City Arts Council, which came up with the criteria. You can apply for the program fund, which will be to do actual arts programming, which is between $10,000 and $15,000. And if you like, you can also partner with a youth serving organization to provide summer opportunities for young people through that opportunity. So I think for organizations, they'll have to make a decision that feels right and appropriate for your organization about which grants to pursue, but we are not able at this time to provide multiple grants to individual organizations.
Awesome. Thanks, Vivian. I think maybe I'll just go over briefly how we arrived at our criteria and grant amounts, and then we can see if there are remaining questions. So after Mayor Phillip and the EDC divided up this $250,000 of the arts money, $150,000 to the program grants, which Vivian just told us about, and then $100,000 for us to see how we could cover the remaining sectors of the arts community. So as we all know, Jersey City, the most diverse city, but across different demographics, so across different wards, and in terms of the arts community, not all of our organizations or groups function in the same way. We have some large nonprofits. We have a lot of smaller galleries that function as LLCs. We have some groups that are sole proprietorships, and we have a lot of individual artists. So the goal was, knowing that the larger organizations who do programming were a natural fit for the arts program grant, which is up to $15,000. And then that might cover those groups that have a larger budget, we wanted to see if we could distribute our funds in a way that would reach also as many people as possible. And some of the groups and individuals who might fall through the cracks of other kinds of grants, who might not be eligible for state grants, who might have smaller budgets, they're not eligible for other grants. So inclusivity was a priority, and trying to spread the money as far as we could in a way that would still be impactful. We did a lot of research. We looked at the New Jersey Theater Alliance application. You'll see on our website, there are a list of relief grants. We looked at all of them and compared. Newark Arts is always a good reference point because they're a few years ahead of us as far as how their arts council serves the community and what some of our goals are. So our grants are $3,000 and $1,000 for groups and organizations, and then $500 grants for individual artists, which we feel like will have a significant impact. That said, you know, $100,000, as all of you know, will go quickly. And we consulted also the cultural assets map. And so even with those amounts, it's still reaching about half of the organizations listed on the asset map and about a quarter of the individual artists listed on the asset map. So that was another way that we, you know, we tried to weigh the amount being enough that would make a difference, but also how we could spread it far and wide. Yeah, that's kind of our process. Should we?
Just a few housekeeping things. The deadline for these applications are July 1st, notification by July 15th. And for the artist grants, the relief grants, you can go to the Jersey City Arts Council's website. And then the rest of the grant information is on the EDC's website, which is jcedc.org. And the summer program, I believe, was also extended to July 1st deadline, notification by July 15th. So if you are planning a summer program, keep that in mind. The notifications are July 15th.
Christy, in the summer program, there's an emphasis on on-site as opposed to virtual, or is there equal?
Yeah, for the summer youth grant, which is not exclusive to arts organizations would have to partner with a youth serving organization if they wanted to apply for the other arts grant funding as well. We have talked about, it can be a mix of virtual and outdoors, you know, in talking with a lot of youth serving organizations, understanding that young people have been cooped up for much of the spring. And so we want to take advantage of opportunities where possible to do safe activities within state guidelines outdoors, but they don't have to be exclusively outdoors. We're also mindful that, unfortunately, with the digital divide, that not every child has access to you know, to devices that would enable them to participate. So if there are programs that people are pursuing that are virtual, you know, that's something to bear in mind as well. And, you know I haven't looked at any of the proposals, but I know that that's something that we always think about in my day job at the Housing Authority, you know, access issues in terms of digital access.
Got it. So we have a number of questions. Would the summer program have to happen July 1st to August 31st for the youth program grant?
Yeah, we haven't specifically said it, but we've said summer, and that's summer. You know, I don't know when I don't know if we'd include the Labor Day weekend as part of that, but I can clarify. But summer arts means during the summer.
Awesome. And we have a question. Can someone define commercial district reopening?
So think about all of the different neighborhoods. We have special improvement districts that often talk about their contours, but as the city is working to revitalize along corridors, whether it's Central Avenue or Monticello and Martin Luther King, the idea of our commercial districts, we have not defined them with distinct boundaries, but that's that's one of the goals. That would be a way of enhancing those environments.
Awesome. We have a question about what age group is considered youth in this case?
That's a good question as well. You know, historically, you know, I'll go back and check, but, you know, we tend to think of youth, you know, early childhood, middle school, high school. You know, I mean, are we going to go up to 21? You know, we've also, on the summer, I am here talking about arts, but on the summer youth programming, we've also looked at youth employment. You know, we would look very favorably at programs that not only provide programming for young people, but also maybe work opportunities for young people in the city. Those are also opportunities that are in short supply. So, you know, I think I can respond, you know, with some FAQs after this on the EDC website. So, for example, if you were running a program for kids but offered job opportunities or internships for the 16 to, you know, 24-year-olds, I think that would be wonderful. Is there a particular age range that you were concerned about on the edge? Maybe I can answer it more specifically.
If it was the person that asked that, you could raise your hand. I think Rimley, maybe.
Yeah, it was me. Yeah, hi. Yeah, just asking about in general, like what would the categories be? Because we work with you know, children and adults, so just wanted to know what are the categories for that would be considered as youth, and also if you know, if these programs that we are offering, if this is going to be like fully funded by the grant, or is there an option of by which it could be like offered to children and youth that could be you know, like a scholarship program could be given out from these grants? Is it, or does it have to be fully, like, is it something that these grants are going to be fully funding these youth programs, or is it going to be like some people who are able to or afford to pay for it, you know, or are these going to be exclusively for the youth that is going to be offered in public places or in a place of your own? There are like questions linked to this that could be, you know, youth-oriented programs.
Right. So first and foremost, you know, for arts organizations, they would need to partner with a youth serving organization. And that happens very often. We see lots of dynamic partnerships with youth organizations engaging artists. You know, that's not new. When you think about young people, we're thinking about, you know, basically 18 and under. If they're young adults, our expectation would be that they are, you know, interning. So I don't, when we talk about summer, you know, programming, youth programming, we're not thinking about a program for people exclusively in their early 20s, right? But very often when the city has engaged in summer youth programming, young people often serve as interns and are involved in the creation, but they also gain from that experience as well. You know, so I think, you know, in your design, you asked about fully funding. That's really up to you in terms of your grant proposal, and you'd be working with a youth serving nonprofit, so you would not really be the lead. The youth serving would be, but it was just a recognition that many of the arts organizations may have partnerships they have or want to explore with youth serving organizations. You know, we are doing this quickly, and we have done it with the idea that we wanted to be as flexible as possible. So, you know, we don't have sort of a list of every possible permutation of what this would look like. We were just trying to open up more opportunity for folks. So, you know, the more, if you have an idea, it would probably be more helpful to provide the idea. And if you wanted to call someone at the EDC, if you don't want to talk about it in a public format, it would probably be more helpful, because some of the questions are a little open-ended and we haven't thought through all of those. So if you've got a particular design and you wanted to say, you know, contact and say, is this something that would be permissible? I think we could do that with you. In terms of vetting, we've got an application. So, you know, you can take a look at the application. It's available online. As usual, it's going to be looking at, how well, what does the program design look like? What does your budget look like? Does it address all of the questions and information requested in the application? But we don't have a specific point system set up at this time.
I just want to chime in because I think I might not have covered it, and it may be in the questions there. Just these grants, the Arts Council grants, are specifically targeted to help people recover from loss. So we are targeting. You'll see from the application what the criteria are, but targeting people who make the majority of their living as an artist or an organization that functions and brings in its income through the arts, and that has had a direct loss because of the shutdown. So a canceled program or canceled employment. Those are the people that we're trying to reach with the relief grant.
So we have a question, two-part question. One is, since churches are nonprofit, can they apply? And is this restricted to Hudson County?
Sorry, ours are specific to Jersey City. So if you're an individual, you have to live in Jersey City. If you're a group, it has to be based in Jersey City.
Okay.
I have a question. Can arts organization partner with social justice organizations?
For what programs? For the youth program?
Or for the youth programs, yes.
Sure, we'd be looking at organizations that do work with young people, right? So, I think partnerships are welcome. Absolutely. I mean, but we'll also be looking at, does the organization work, work with young people?
Okay. Got it.
Councilwoman Prince Ari, would you have anything to add?
No, I think that Vivian did a fantastic job covering everything. So did Heather. If you guys have additional questions, you can always send them my way. Any additional ideas, absolutely do that. As it relates to some of the work too and some of the commercial corridors, I know, for example, the McGinley Square SID is doing a pop-up pedestrian plaza. Westside Partnership has worked with Art House on a gift voucher program. So if you're thinking to engage with local businesses, those are some ways you might be able to consider doing it. Timing and turnaround can be kind of slow, and we don't want you guys to create programs just for the sake of creating them, but there are opportunities there as it relates to that. I won't speak to youth organizations because that's not really my area, but that's something else to think about. And yeah, that's, any questions, is we're here for you.
Thank you so much. So I think at this time, we're going to turn the program over to Justin Tinker, who is the technical director at NJCU. And he's going to kind of give us a summary of some of the highlights or important things we need to think about in reopening. So Justin?
Hi, thank you. Hey everybody, it's good to see so many people here. I'm going to do a screen share of the presentation and we'll get rolling. There's a lot to cover, and at the same time, it could be construed as not enough as well, so bear with us. But for a COVID era of reopening, analysis and thoughts on how to approach reopening for artists and arts organizations, which is who we are. So beyond COVID-19, everything's going to be a lot harder. I think we're all well aware of this, but we also need to consider non-COVID related safety hazards that become worse in the COVID era. How do you stay physically distanced in an evacuation or a shelter-in-place situation? We may need to rethink where we typically reserve our physical spaces for people to evacuate to and ask ourselves, is that going to be big enough? Do we need a different plan and adjust accordingly? How do you manage bottleneck areas such as restrooms or dressing rooms and ticket windows? So adjustments may need to be made. There is no one-size-fits-all option here. all of our physical spaces, all of our event sizes, the times, the amount of audience we're having, the types of performers are different on a case-by-case basis and on a venue-by-venue basis. Also, you need to consider your own geography. Where are you in the city? How clogged do your streets get? How busy are your neighboring properties? And do you need to make accommodation for that to maintain good social distancing? Our goal ultimately is to make reasonable and responsible choices for our situation. Emphasis should be placed on what we can do first of all before we consider things we can buy. Now, there will be expenses. We will need to make purchases such as PPE and other equipment, or even pay for additional staffing. But there are things we can do in the meantime that don't cost much that will help us plan. So let's look at those carefully together. And we'll get toward that new normal we're all struggling toward. Now, what's really important about our situation is that we are smaller venues, and small events successfully reopening will lead the way for the whole industry. And it's really scary because all those big production houses are kind of eyeballing us. If we fail, it could set the whole industry back. And I believe the last global pandemic we had just over 100 years ago, I've looked up and seen that entertainment industry was shut down for an entire 3 years. So let's hope we can get it back up and running far quicker than that with the right protocols. We've got to proceed with an abundance of caution together. And how? Well, here are some good first steps. A government directive legally allowing us to reopen does not mean we can do so safely. We need both things. We need the government to say, all right, we're going to allow for this phased reopening and that phased, and work very careful with their directives. But also just look at our own situation. Can we safely reopen? We're still in the midst of a highly contagious global pandemic. Asymptomatic carriers, as well as people with very mild symptoms, can spread the disease. And outside of Jersey City, as a country, we still currently lack widespread testing. And there's about 120 antibody tests on the market right now that are allowed by the FDA, but not officially vetted by the FDA. And up to 50% of them are giving false readings. So that's concerning, but it can only get better, right? So what do? We update, update, update. Every day you need to strive to consistently seek out the latest scientifically valid information to inform your safety protocols. And there's new information daily, if not hourly. So it's not a lot of time you need to invest, but probably the amount of time of drinking your morning cup of coffee should be spent reading up the latest releases from World Health Organization or the CDC, those types of things. Consume the information that's scientifically verified, supported by public health organizations, disseminated from medical professionals. This is basic research. Just make sure your sources are valid and make sure they're experts in the field. And take this information, turn them into protocols, communicate your protocols to your staff, your performers, your patrons clearly and often. We need to change the patrons' expectations toward a new cultural shift here. There is a lot of resistance to wearing masks. I think I see only about 1 in 20 people out in my neighborhood wearing a mask correctly. One fellow I saw him wearing it on his wrist. So I was like, man, why do you even have it with you? But there's just a lot of resistance to wearing masks. It's similar to back when they made seatbelts mandatory, or in the post 9/11 era of security checkpoints, your shoes off at the airport. Nobody really wants to do it. It's a big hassle, but over time it just becomes the way it is. I'm sure none of us even think about putting seatbelts on. We just do it. So that's what we're working toward. And that needs to happen over time with consistent messaging from us for the patrons to start to comply, as well as ourselves. So transparency and showing our new sanitary practices is going to help coax nervous patrons back to the performance spaces. So we're going to educate the patrons for maximizing health and safety, minimizing disruption of our events, and we're going to condition them toward our new cultural shift. What do we explain? Social distancing, the entertainment industry, it's a social thing. So maybe that's not the best term. Maybe we should start adopting the term physical distancing. We want them to come socialize, enjoy events and entertainment. So let's physically distance to stay safe. Facial coverings. This is not the type of mask you should wear. It's not what we mean. We need to be very specific because facial coverings is just slotting into the new no shirt, no shoes, no mask, no service. And longer wait times are to be expected when we communicate this to our patrons. We need to be positive, be practical, and be proportionate for each situation. How to message. If you have marketing staff, get them on promoting your messages without being intimidating. Stay positive. Use photos or video to show good times being had by people following the rules. Hooray. Storyboards are great. If you end up having long queues down hallways or just to get into your venue, there's an opportunity to show some storyboards on how your space is being sanitized and help alleviate more concerns before they even enter. Announcements, audible, visual, and in different languages. You cannot message well enough and often enough to provide for the new cultural shift. Performers are wonderful. Mostly performers are very personable. They're performers. Use their authority and they can remind patrons, thank you for being here. We're all in this together. You are all superstars wearing your masks and being brave, and here we are together. So where to message? Everywhere. All your patrons should see the messaging about your protocols for COVID right from the website, social media channels, ticket purchasing, every single interaction they have with your venue. Protecting and supporting performers and crew, because patrons are only half the battle, right? We need to consider designating a COVID compliance officer, or whatever you want to call them, to oversee COVID prevention, disinfection, PPE backstage, and in all work areas, offices, workshops, stage. Screen everyone daily for symptoms prior to entering the workspace. This is another thing that needs to become just automatic for the time being. And all cast and crew should inform the compliance officer or whoever it is we get in charge here of symptoms, or if they know that they've been exposed to someone who is symptomatic and they've learned about that, whether it was on the job or from home. We need to be notified and stay on top of it. Practices for healthy staff: physical distancing, PPE, hand washing, face coverings, temperature screenings, cough and sneeze etiquette. I think this is the big one, cough and sneeze etiquette. Backstage areas are notoriously dusty places. And even the whole coughing into your elbow thing is not so great. You're just placing your arm in front of a bunch of droplets that could contain a virus that are going over, around, and through the arm. Not to mention the fact that some people are still elbow bumping with these coughed on elbows. So we need to find a better way to manage our coughs and sneezes. Infection mitigation coordinator is another position or another name for the prior one. For a specialist that can come into your organization, or possibly these duties can be shared among existing staff. But ideally, this position or this person would have a medical and a risk management experience or background. And their job would be to coordinate, communicate, and help implement public health guidelines, work with venue event producers, and implement event health plans, train workers, these are your ushers, your crew, everybody, on current hazards and infection control measures, and determine if worker or patron safely may enter an event space where there is a health concern. So basically, they would be the frontline person in charge during screenings and whatnot. Sanitizing your venue. Keep those high touch areas clean. I look for this information just about daily. There still is nothing concrete that says the virus can live this long on this surface, that long on that surface. It seems to change, but the general consensus from OSHA, CDC, and World Health Organization is that it is a strong possibility that the virus can be passed on from a surface. So disinfect them with approved products often. Document your cleaning practices and display this information for your patrons. That's part of transparency, and over time, it's going to build accountability and trust between the venues and the patrons. And that's what we really want to have. Staying consistent, ingress to egress. So you don't want to just message to your patrons when they're buying their tickets. It just needs to be a constant. From their experience at your venue, it should match the health guidelines they consistently receive, beginning with their first ticketing and social media interaction. If you don't have a lot of hand sanitizing stations, install more when and where you can. Your parking lots, consider eliminating, if you have them, every other space to ensure physical distancing outside your venue. It doesn't help to have wonderful physical distancing in your venue if your family's getting sneezed on by the person a foot and a half away getting out of the car next to you. That's just not going to work. Will call and box office, there should be clear protective shields. We may need to look at some way to get those happening for venues that do not currently have that. Virtual queuing is the idea that people could schedule their arrival times in possibly 10 to 15 minute blocks, so that you don't have a large group of audience showing up all at once to try to get in. It can be more of a steady trickle. This will help out a lot by way of your staff being able to manage ingress and egress, as well as just maintaining proper order and better physical distancing. During the ticketing, patrons can select their time and location. If you have shuttle transportation or transportation services, you need to coordinate with them as well. Limited number of unscheduled entries is recommended to hold in reserve so that you can accommodate patrons who might have been stuck in traffic, or people possibly with physical disabilities or unable to sit in a seat for a long time may need to get up and stretch that old back that hurts. Space requirements to accommodate longer but less densely packed queues. How much space? 36 square feet or 4 square meters per unrelated group. Where to queue? You got to separate your pedestrians from the traffic. You need to separate pedestrians from each other so they have enough room to pass by without getting germs all over each other. And arrange with your neighboring properties if you have them, or public safety, say if you're a campus or anything like that, to allow for early arriving patrons to wait in adjacent areas. If you're in a commercial type neighborhood, talk to your neighbors, your beauty salons, your bodegas, let them know. We may have some people on the street. We'll have ushers out here to make sure they're properly distanced, and work with them. Be a good neighbor. How to queue, manage the entry queue with markings on the ground and rope stanchions, which most of us have some stanchions and rope. I was seeing ridiculous prices for pre-done stickers you can throw on the ground that say social distancing or physical distancing and logos, like 40, 45, 50 bucks each. 2-inch wide electric bright vinyl tape is easy to put down, and it costs just a few dollars a roll, and that's really going to serve you a lot better for this. Plus, you should have usher staff out there helping, or volunteers. So queuing is where you want to put your signage up for your event rules and compliance requirements. You don't want patrons finally getting into the venue and then they find out, oh, I needed a mask, or don't let things like that be a surprise to them. Your ushers need to be trained to provide guidance, let them know anticipated wait times, ingress procedures, and enforce the physical distancing. Disability accommodations are still a thing. Clear face coverings for screeners is a great idea. You never know if someone needs to read lips, which they can't do through a cloth mask. At NJCU, I believe we're going to take this as our standard for front of house personnel for the time being. You also need to remember to have unimpeded accessibility for patrons in wheelchairs, expedited access for patrons unable to wait in long lines. Some people can't stand that super long. I'm getting there myself sometimes. Screening. Set up a screening station outside the venue. Don't let the people in and then find out they're running a fever. So have a screening just outside. And the screening workers should be trained and approved by the infection mitigation coordinator. Wear face coverings, gloves. Ideally, wear some sort of medically identifiable clothing. Scrubs are ideal. It gives them just enough of an air of authority to encourage compliance without being threatening. But temperatures should be scanned on every patron if possible. And the screening staff should be trained to be able to conduct a brief visual screening for symptoms. And if they see someone looking kind of flushed or not okay, then perhaps take it to performing a brief questionnaire. Hey, are you feeling well? Have you been to large gatherings lately? Maybe they need to bring the infection mitigation coordinator in at that point to make a judgment call and handle it. An ounce of prevention. Bag inspection, if you have that, just looking for contraband or anything. People bringing in food and drinks is a huge problem for a lot of theater spaces. You may allow them food and drink normally, but we need to think any drink and food containers or trash left behind are not only just rubbish now, they are also little wads of germ bombs, and that's not a great thing. So we may need to rethink that and just be on special alert when we're inspecting bags or anything for ingress. Catering for artists and guests, you may need to repurpose areas like your stage as physically distance areas to eat. So we're going to have a picnic on the stage. Everyone stay far apart. Face coverings, have a supply on hand for patrons to use while the culture shifts. Eventually, everyone's just going to have their own mask, but that's not necessarily the way it is right now. And also sanitizer stations everywhere you can get them. Duh. And I just wanted to say duh because it's a wonderful word. Potty break. More time's going to be needed, hands down. And this is a beautiful, beautiful restroom. I wish it was mine. Ushers should be stationed right outside your restrooms to basically monitor the occupancy. You come to the realization that your restroom can probably handle 3 people at a time, no more, to maintain safe physical distancing, then that's their job. Let no more than 3 in. When one comes out, another can go in. It's going to take up a lot more time. If possible for your events, eliminate intermissions to reduce the usage of the facilities mid-event. That may not always be possible. Ultimately, if we can open legally and safely, if we can keep it clean and transparent, if we can update ourselves and adjust our protocols accordingly over time, and get our patronage just kind of re-educated, comfortable, confident in the services we can provide, and get them to that new cultural shift of just, this is our world now, and we want you to be a part of it. We'll make it all there together, and we got to be here for each other. So here's some of the sources I pulled this info from. I go back to almost all of these, sometimes up to twice a day, just to make sure there isn't anything new, and there's almost always something new. So thanks for your time. Thank you for listening. I'm going to stop my share now, and the info should be available later on. Can someone say how they get that, where they get that again? I'm usually moderating, so.
The information's in the chat, and it'll also be, we give the chat and a recording to Heather to put on the Arts Council website, so you can have access there. Thank you so much, Justin.
My pleasure.
We have a few minutes for questions about reopening strategies, and also we can take some questions about the grants if there are any more. So yeah,
I see a hand up from Beth Cope. I'm going to unmute you, Beth.
Thank you. That was a great, fantastic presentation, but I want to know if there's going to be a second round of grants so that we can comply with all of that. I mean, it's not funny. You're laughing, but I'm not laughing. I mean, I don't know anyone on this call who can comply with that unless they're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars. Is there going to be a second round of grants so that we can reopen and comply with all of that? That's my question.
I think that your concern is very valid. I smiled because I've not got anything to do with the grant process. I don't know it yet, but yeah, money will be needed. What do I want to say? These are recommendations, and a lot of them we can accomplish without the use of money, and some of it is on the other end of that, and it is quite expensive. It's some of them will be ongoing costs like paying additional staff. Some of it, luckily, will be just one-off expenses like installing shields or hand sanitizers, things like that. Anyone else have some thoughts on this? And does anyone know about any additional grants in the future?
Well, I think that there has been talked about that there is CARES Act money that could be gone for in this, but the question is, will it happen?
I've done a bit of research about the supplies. The expensive part really is the labor, the front of house staffing, the fact that we're all going to need 3 or 4 times as many ushers to manage the flow of traffic and the bathrooms and whatnot. That's really the prohibitive expense in all of these guidelines. And I'd add to that the smaller the venue, the less exponential that change is.
One thing I'll add to that too is that the Department of Health is also a resource, and they've been helping with a lot of the reopening challenges that small businesses have been facing. So there could be some resources there too that we can connect you with. And if there's any specific questions around the reopening hurdles, I'm happy to put you in touch.
We have someone has made a suggestion to use volunteers for some of the staffing, and you would have them sign a release form and be part of the training that your ushers would be getting. So your volunteers can be getting training too, along with your ushers, or have a separate training for volunteers if you feel like that you need more questions answered. And Sam, we will happily make the presentation slides available.
See a hand up from Summer.
We're
Hi,
unmuted,
guys.
Summer.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you, Justin, for that great presentation. I was wondering if, I definitely see these things, and we are not brick and mortar, so I don't have to worry about a lot of this stuff, but I was wondering, I guess, if there's some sort of mutual aid possible with all of the organizations in the city. I know that the people who do have brick and mortar are frequently using their spaces for rehearsals and things like that. But there also might be a possibility that organizations can collaborate in one space that's particularly suited for social distancing. I don't know what's happening there right now, but just the biggest place I'm thinking of is the Lowe's, right? So like, what if several organizations presented programming in the Lowe's and kind of just, it was set up for social distancing kind of once, but served multiple groups, or maybe we could do outdoor festivals. This is certainly the time of year for that anyway. I think we might be able to get more done with collaboration rather than each individual organization with a limited budget and staff trying to take on a task for a a company that's 3 times bigger than itself.
I think that's a valid point. In addition, there's been some guidance about rehearsals, that in limiting the time inside for rehearsals, that thinking about in your scheduling of production rehearsals to schedule some of the time outside.
I do want to, sorry to bounce back and forth. And Justin, thank you. That was super helpful. But there are still some questions in the chat about the grants, and I'll try to answer the ones I see that apply to our grants, but also to clarify the program grants, the arts program grants and the youth collaborative grants are being facilitated through the EDC, and the artist relief grants are facilitated through the Jersey City Arts Council. So if you're left when we hang up tonight with still some questions, you can direct an email that way appropriately. To Rimley, I see your question about, if you're an artist that works for an organization. So for the relief grants, again, we're focusing on loss. So the organization can apply if the organization has suffered a loss. If you as an artist make most of your living from your arts and have lost that income, then that's a separate application. But you cannot apply to be compensated for your work with the organization if the organization is still paying you. I hope that answers the question. I don't know if Vivian is still on. There are a couple other questions.
I'm going through a bunch of these questions. I answered in chat. I believe
Okay.
Sam asked, can you put 2 program concepts in one application? 1 program concept in the application. So that's how I would answer that. The applications are available if you have specific questions. They're due by July 1. I think it would be helpful to, if you haven't had a chance to look at the application and the questions that they ask, both for the relief fund, for the summer arts, or for the program, because we've tried to make them very simple. I know that many of you have applied to foundations, whether they are corporate or other or federal dollars. We have really tried to make very simple applications to get the money out the door. This is a volunteer effort. We do not have sort of an enormous, for many of us on the committee, the EDC is not a huge organization, so we may not have all of the sort of things that you would expect in applying to a foundation grant with, lots and lots of, all of the expectations that you're going to hand it. I saw that there was a question about audit. We're not asking about those types of things. We want strong concepts. I know earlier, I think Rimley, or maybe it was somebody else, I apologize. I should never do that when you don't know who you're talking to. So someone asked the question about whether or not a social justice organization would be eligible. If, the same way, if someone's applying for an arts grant, we want to know that you've done arts work. If you're collaborating with another organization for a youth program, it would be good to know that you have some sort of track record working with young people, right? We're trying to help people in the area in which they have expertise and capacity. And that's how I would answer that. So, we're not creating these, these very specific containers, but it should not be a surprise that this organization wants to work with young people.
Vivian, I have a question. Olga Levina, Jersey City Theater Center.
Hi, Olga.
So, if organization asked us to supply for any arts organization, especially the ones that been in Jersey City for some time, we have our audits, we have our teaching artists, so it's pretty simple for us to hire teaching artists to teach for another organization. So if organization applied and they commission our arts organization to provide summer program, can our organizations still apply for relief fund for $3,000 or for any kind of relief fund, because obviously those of us who have rents, I mean, what $3,000 for Jersey City Data Center if our rent is $7,000 a month? I'm not even talking about the employment and, you know, the works that we lost. So how would you suggest we go around about this? And if we're not gonna receive the youth programs that another organization applied for, we're gonna just end up without any grants.
Right. So you have a couple, it's really ultimately your decision. Larger organizations actually have more flexibility in deciding what they want to apply to. If you decide you want to apply as the lead for a summer youth program, you can do that, but then you cannot apply for the arts program. If you would like to partner with a youth serving organization to partner on a summer youth program, you then have the option of applying either to a program grant or a relief fund grant, right? You know, technically, there's also a nonprofit relief fund that's going to be made available. An arts organization could say, I don't want to apply to the arts. I'm going to apply under a nonprofit, but you have to choose a category. I know it is difficult to hear, but we have a very limited pot of money, and we have a tremendous amount of need. So organizations are going to have to make decisions about where they think they're best positioned. But I think arts organizations actually have more flexibility to choose what path they want. The other thing is that this is a fund that was created by donation, and it covers a wide range of community need. Unfortunately, is not designed to address all of the losses and challenges that arts organizations face. So I hear you that you have lots of costs, and it's a very challenging environment, but this is one pot of money, and this was the design that was developed in consultation with the Arts Council and others to figure out how to spread the money in a variety of ways. But you can make those choices. You can apply to summer arts on your own, but then you're not going to apply, youth summer program. I know there's some arts organizations that could do that, but then you cannot apply in the other category. You could decide to partner and then make a choice between applying for program grant or for relief grant.
Thank you.
So that's something you'll have to make a decision about.
Thank you so much. But the thing why I understand, thank you, your answer was great. I'm sure there are some organizations didn't have this choice because last week everything changed when we already submitted the applications. Some of us submitted the applications and then guidelines changed and you added. This is, you know, we're not gonna go to our partners and say, I'm not gonna serve you, I'm gonna make, but your answer was great. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Edward's had a hand up for a while. I know we're at time, but can we get one more question in real quick?
Yes, my question, Stephanie partially answered it. My question was, what if the artists arrived in a van altogether? Should we insist that they keep social distances backstage? Or the fact that they arrive together in one van, does it matter that we do?
I would suggest treating them as you would any group of people that arrive together as audience members. They should remain together. They should, of course, be screened before they're let in as well, make sure no one's running a fever or anything, but just following the same protocols. So, yeah, small groups. We've been thinking about this a lot for audiences, small families. Do they really need to be sat 6 feet apart, or can they be together? That's going to be a judgment call for each individual venue, but I believe that if a group is together and has been, let's keep them together. it may be more work seating wise, but definitely for artists, bands especially, you should probably treat them as just a group of people together and maintain physical distancing between them and the rest of the crew and staff.
Okay, may I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Absolutely.
What if you're taking temperatures and one of the performers have a high temperature? Do we let them perform, or do we send? I mean, let's say the singer in the band is running a high temperature. Do we allow this man to perform when you already have an audience waiting?
I don't feel like that's a good idea. Does somebody higher up the totem pole want to weigh in on that? Stephanie?
It would be, it would be a discussion with your infection mitigation coordinator.
Mitigation coordinator. Yeah.
Really?
That's,
And
that's,
so what do we do with our audience? I mean, they're expecting Stephanie to perform. Stephanie walks in, she has a temperature, and her band is okay. All the other band members are fine. And so now we came to see Stephanie sing.
But
You guys didn't know Stephanie's a singer, did you?
oh, I do. Yeah.
Okay. And so here
Homework.
it is now. Our audience says, we want Stephanie. We want our money back.
But the question is also, is it endangering the audience to have that
Well,
person?
I canceled my first row. And one of the other things I wanted to suggest, your presentation was great, by the way.
Thank
Your
you.
name is Justin?
Yes.
And the one thing that I did as I was preparing for my room is that I wanted to make sure that I sat the people who sat in the center seats first. And then I would bring the other people so that not to have people crossing each other.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah.
Great idea. You can also ingress from front to back for your audience area. That's also a good idea.
And what I decided to do for egress is from rear to front.
Yes,
so the
absolutely.
people in the back could go out first.
Yeah. And these, ultimately, we need to think about these things for the first time.
Yeah.
But after we've thought about these things or heard someone else say them out loud for the first time, they really do sound like common sense. So a lot of what we need to do is common sense.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Looks like we're about at the end. Can we say one more time how the presentation and the recordings can be found? I've been getting private messages about that.
Absolutely. So they'll be on the Arts Council website. You can also email Heather with questions. And Heather, do you want to say again?
Yeah, so every week's call, the video and the chat log go on the Arts Council website. You just have to give us a few days to transition it over there. I do want to say, the grants opened yesterday morning because that was the day we committed to, and there was that sort of window between then and now, and some of your questions may have been answered. If we are holding to, as Vivian said, that you can only receive one of the grants, but if you yesterday applied for the Arts Council grant and now realize you may be have an idea for the program grant, then go ahead and do that, and we will be collaborating when we do this review process to make sure that that there's not overlap. But from here forward, now that everyone has the information, if you haven't yet applied, try to choose the grant that best suits you.
Two other announcements. Next week, Jamie from Rising Tide Capital will be doing a presentation on additional grant funding opportunities. So please join us for that. And on Saturday, June 27th, NJCU will be doing a virtual program with authors from the Pandemic Baseball Book Club. So we hope you join us for that. I think that the Arts Council is still receiving information about events that are happening, both virtual and live. Is that accurate?
I'm sorry, I missed you, Stephanie. I was reading.
Sorry. The Arts Council is still maintaining a calendar of events, both virtual and live.
Well, yeah, so we actually ended up putting the website calendar on hold when everything froze, and so we have an event form. If you receive our newsletters, you'll see, so that we can add events to our weekly newsletters, and that's how we've been communicating. But yeah, as things start to transition back into real life, we will reactivate our website calendar, and we'll try to send some clear information out about that.
Awesome. All right, thank you so much, Vivian, Christine, Heather, and Mira. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. We'll leave the chat open a few minutes, so if you need to copy down anything, and we hope that you join us next week.